ونادوا أصحاب الجنة أن سلام عليكم لم يدخلوها وهم يطمعون.
I'd like to thank Al-Salam for also giving me the opportunity and this chance to share some information that I think is relevant to a lot of you guys. I know actually is. So the title of this talk is, why did the Sahaba convert to Islam? Of course, I'm also going to be going through why did some of the people of the time not convert to Islam? But first of all, I'm curious. I want to know what you guys think. If anyone has any idea as to why, actually before that, why is this even important to us? Someone, anyone? Ya akhi, Habib, ya akhi, you're smiling, ya akhi. What's on your mind?
If we need to trust the first generation, so basically we need to know why they converted. Was it political or were they religiously motivated?
One more time?
Basically, we need to know the reason why they converted because we need to know their intentions.
Okay.
So if it was a political thing, if they were religiously motivated, or if it was a peer pressure.
Okay. MashaAllah, Doctor, I like that. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I think that we need to understand this so that we can, if we understand like what were their motivations, what moved them to convert to Islam, we can realize the essence of Islam.
Okay.
And apply it in our lives as well.
Is that clear, guys? Was that clear? Inshallah. Okay, so yeah, good answers. For me, one of the main ones is a lot of times when we see people convert to different religions, a lot of times it's really bad reasons. Some people just convert because, hey, this girl is from a different religion, I'm going to convert to hers so that her family, will be accepting of me. Some people say that's why Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, converted. Wallahu a'lam, he you can ask him when he comes over here a couple of days from now. That's his punishment for oversleeping and not attending today's lecture. In any case, there are some of the Sahaba, they presented intellectual reasons for their conversion to Islam. And naturally, when I first started to properly practice the religion, I was looking for videos like that. I'd go online, I'd look at testimonies. I'm really interested in intellectual reasons for conversion. And subhanAllah, when I looked further into it, I did find, alhamdulillah, I'm not talking about the individual level, I'm talking about the society. You had the society convert to Islam, and different portions of the society convert to Islam due to intellectual reasons. So, that was my motivation for looking into this. And subhanAllah, when you go through the seerah, you'll find some explicit reasons. And check this out. This is pretty cool. You can actually trace the number of Muslims through a hadith and through their participation in battles, and there's this huge spike that occurs around the 7th year and 8th year. So Al-Zuhri mentions that at that specific period, around the time, I'm not going to specify specifically what he's referring to, but around that time, around the 6th year, there's a spike. A lot of people just suddenly start converting to Islam. What specifically happened at that time? Inshallah, we're going to be going through that. And initially, as you can see, it's a slow start. You don't have droves of people converting immediately. It slowly starts to pick up, and then there's this bounce a couple of years before the Hijrah. And of course, at the time of Hijrah, you see it shooting up around here. What's going on there? Oh, by the way, guys, this topic is a bit of a dense topic, and there's going to be a lot of information. And in my opinion, I'm sure that this is something that's actually proven. When you hear information for the first time and you share that information, there's a barakah in the information. It sticks to your mind. If you listen to it once and that's it, with a short period of time, it just evaporates. So if you pick up some things in this lecture that you find beneficial, interesting, do share it at home, share it with family, share it with friends. Just a few things here and there, inshallah, will stick. So this is an interesting one. Why didn't Quraysh convert to Islam? Any thoughts, guys? That's definitely a correct answer. They had an issue with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being a prophet. Why not someone who's of a higher status? Definitely traditions of the elders people were following. You had Quraysh follow, not only Quraysh, everyone's just stuck to what they believed in. Who are you to come to tell us something new? Anyone else?
They were afraid to lose their status because they were like high up.
MashaAllah. They were afraid to lose their status because they were high up. Definitely, 100%.
They were afraid to lose their trade.
MashaAllah. Were you, you got the notes, Akhi. You got the lecture notes. Okay, MashaAllah. So that's definitely one of the main ones. You want to go ahead? 100%. And these things, of course, and all these answers are correct. And we see it today. It's not only something that existed back in the time. Even today, when people, they're stuck to their roots, they're stuck to their traditions, they're stuck to what they inherited from their fathers. And at times, they're stuck to financial reasons. If I have to convert to a different religion, that's going to affect myself and my job because perhaps I'm doing something that's haram, something that's involved in haram. In any case, like specifically, I want to get across to you the situation at the time. So the peninsula was chaotic. The peninsula was absolutely chaotic. You had all these different tribes, and they were dirt poor, and a lot of times the only means for survival, apart from the little bit of rain that they got in order for their camels to graze and whatnot, in order to live for day after day, the only thing they could do was pounce on each other and rob one another and take each other's camels. That's how they mainly, that was like the main means of income. I'm specifically talking about the Bedouins. Of course, not everyone was a Bedouin at the time. You had people who were city folk, referred to as al-Hadar. And of course, the people of Mecca and Medina at the time, Yathrib and Ta'if, they were Hadar. They were civilized people, of course, compared to the Bedouins. But you have to keep in mind that because they were somewhat better off, they were targets. And everyone in a city, well, more or less, was a target. And the Ta'if itself is like a fortified land right next to Mecca. Mecca in itself wasn't fortified, which is very strange. But if you think about it, it makes sense because Mecca was something that was special because it was a trade area because of the religious status of Mecca. And you had people coming all over to do the Hajj, and in the Hajj they had the idols, and these were not idols just of Quraysh, but these included idols of different tribes. Now, one other thing that the Qurayshis did that was really special was they had formed bonds with all these different tribes in order for them to travel freely all the way up north to Sham and all the way down south to Yemen. And through that, they were able to secure trade routes, which was extremely important because anyone who'd be traveling through the desert, you'd just be wiped out and your camels would be gone. Quraysh was one of the few tribes that were a complete exception because they had formed treaties with all the tribes. It is said that Hashim himself, the great-grandfather of the Prophet, peace be upon him, established the northern trade route, met up with the Ghassanids, met up with the Romans. He was given permission to trade freely. Of course, on his way back, he's making deals with all the tribes. If you guys don't mind, let me go through your land. Let's have everything peaceful. I'll kick off some of the profit back to you. And through that, Mecca became an even more special place. And the people, they started to have greater respect for the Meccans. Not only that, but with time, their status became, it became something even different. They're not just the caretakers of the Haram. They're not just the caretakers of the Kaaba, but people started to form these superstitions they would have in their minds that they cannot bring food from outside. If they're going to circumambulate the Kaaba, they would have to only purchase food from the Meccans, from Quraysh. The Qurayshis also had like these strange rules that if you're going to circumambulate the Kaaba, you're going to have to wear our clothes. You cannot come in with your own clothes. And that's why some people went around the Kaaba naked. And like they had these little things that they would do in order to make money from the people. And of course, they were situated, Mecca is right next to Ta'if. Too much information? Too fast? Inshallah not. Slow down a bit. Okay, well, I'm good. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Ya akhi, Allah barak fik. So this is from the practice back in the clubhouse days. Huh? So in any case, Ta'if was right next to Mecca. Ta'if is the center of trade for the whole peninsula. And if you look up at Ta'if, I mean, even today, Ta'if is green. If you wanted pomegranates, if you wanted grapes, anything you wanted, you go to Ta'if. Mecca had nothing except for the Kaaba. So people, they would all go to the marketplace in Ta'if, and then when they were done, they would all go to Mecca. So this area became a trade zone. It became a spiritual place for everyone, and it received that special status. And then Muhammad ﷺ came, and he said, okay, no more idols. And not only that, it's not just not only idols, but this idea if you cannot bring food from outside, this is, where's this coming from? This idea of you have to wear the Meccan clothes, where's this coming from? So these thoughts, these ideas, this became a financial burden on the people of Quraysh, so this definitely had an impact, had an influence. And that's one of the reasons as to why Quraysh were not too happy with this idea. Of course, they did convert later on. But let's talk about the initial conversions. You have the Ghifar tribe converting as a whole. You have the Aus and the Khazraj, which of course played a major role in Islam expanding. And you have the masses, of course, which I'm going to get to later on. What is the Ghifar tribe? Anyone know any famous Ghifaris? Abu Dhar. Anyone else? That is correct. Abu Dhar is pretty much the most famous Ghifari. Okay, and there's no close second place, right? It's always Abu Dhar. What Ghifar was special for, it's not just, remember what I was saying earlier, all these tribes, they're all like at each other's throats and trying to steal each other's camels. Ghifar, they were so oppressive, they didn't just focus on like attacking other tribes, neutral tribes. No, they're waiting for tribes to go to Mecca and then they would attack them. These people, they're going to perform the pilgrimage, let's attack those people because they're not going to be ready for battle. That's how they were known to be raiders. That's what made Ghifar special. And they were polytheists, they were Bedouins, they were raiders, of course. They didn't observe the sacred months. Even the polytheists, they believed that, okay, these 3 months, 4 months, we do not go into war. We don't go to battle. We're all peaceful during these 4 months. Ghifar, they didn't care. They didn't believe in this stuff. A small tribe, relatively speaking, 1,000 around. And it was located it was towards the Sham route, which is an ironic thing, which we're going to get through, inshallah. So the first converts to Ghifar, so Abu Dhar number one, actually it's not Abu Dhar. The first person to convert to Islam was Unais al-Ghifari, the brother of Abu Dhar. And what made Unais so special is what Unais was a poet. And Unais used to take part in something called a munafara. Munafarat are these, basically, it's like this battle in which one would praise themselves, praise their heritage, praise their lineage, and there would be a judge, usually a soothsayer, a wise man, someone that's high from a tribe, a neutral person. They would go to that person. Each person would be praising themselves, usually with poetry, usually with eloquent speech. And Unais was someone who, despite from being from Ghifar, he was so eloquent that he would win these battles. In any case, Unais al-Ghifari hears the Prophet, peace be upon him, reciting the Quran. And this changes him. And remember, Unais is someone who's competitive, who wouldn't mind challenging people. And there's the hadith in Sahih Muslim. Unais al-Ghifari himself, he just won some camels after going through a munafara. I'm not going to say rap battle, but like that's the modern equivalent. In any case, he goes through that. He just won some camels. He hears Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he realizes something. Unais says, they said that he's a poet or a soothsayer or a magician. I have heard the words of soothsayers, but his words aren't like theirs. I also compared his words to the types of poetry, but nobody can say that his poetry. By Allah, he is truthful and they're liars. And subhanAllah, just by hearing the Quran, Unais was able to judge that this man was sent by God. Now, this may seem strange to us today, because when we look at art, when we look at speech, when we look at film, we all think, hey, it's subjective, you know? We say, hey, this movie, I like it, you don't like it. It's a subjective thing. There's no right or wrong answer. But this was not how the Arabs looked at eloquent speech. They did not treat speech equally. They believed that this is good, this is bad, this is better than this, and they saw this as an objective science. It wasn't a matter of taste. Even if someone said, I like that because it reminds me of home. However, that other poem is superior. And by the way, we actually do feel this same way about art or about film. You'll say, I really like that movie because that reminds me of my parents, or that reminds me of my wife, or something like that, or my dog, or whatever. However, I know that it's a bad movie. I get a feeling it's a bad movie. And at the end of the day, the movie that I didn't necessarily like, that's the one that wins best screenwriting, best film, best storyline, right? And you have a group of judges, and they're the experts in the field, and they make those decisions. And the people ultimately, they're like, okay, طيب, you are the experts, خلاص, you guys judge, right? So this was an actual field. And imagine this, the influence of these poets caused people to convert to Islam. Because there's a difference between challenging something, I'm aware of this being at a high level of eloquence, and I'm going to challenge it, and what actually happened with the Quran. You know that no one challenged the Quran, by the way. It's as if someone says, okay, so I wonder how much that thing weighs, that speaker weighs. Any guesses? 15, ya Musa? 20? Musa, can you lift it with one hand, akhi? Maybe, yeah? But what if it weighed 100 kilos? Would you try? Okay, so that's what happened. That's what happened with the Quran. They saw it at such a high level, they're not going to try. And this is not even i'jaz. I'jaz is when you try to do something and you fail to do something. What occurred was iblas. They saw it, now it's too heavy, and they just walked away. That's how they treated the Quran. And by the way, these are the same people. For example, Abdullah bin Zib'ara. What he used to do is, he used to respond to the Muslim poets. For example, Hassan bin Thabit, when he would attack Kuffar Quraysh with poetry, when he used to insult them with poetry, Abdullah bin Zib'ara would insult him back, and he would insult the Muslims back. But he wouldn't try to do it with the Quran. He wouldn't try to come up with his own Quran. Yeah? So this is iblas. Proving the Quran's superiority, there are two methods of proving the Quran's superiority. This is very important, guys. Keep this in mind. First one is testimony. If you are unable to determine eloquence, you have testimony. Someone can simply tell you there's nothing as eloquent as the Quran. And who do you go to? You go to the experts. You go to the experts of eloquence, they will tell you. And testimony is like the testimony of any miracle. when the Sahaba, they saw the Prophet, peace be upon him, perform miracles, that's testimony. And by the way, this is not something specific to Islam. Of course, we do not believe, Muslims do not believe in the miracles of Jesus alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, because of the Bible. We know it through the Quran and we know it through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, Christians believe in the miracles of Jesus because of testimony. So testimony is throughout, and everyone accepts testimony. Of course, the stronger the evidence, the greater the weight of the testimony. The more people, the more corroborations, the higher the validity or the strength of the claim. That's number one, is testimony. And number two is experiencing the Quran yourself, learning balagha, learning eloquence. And there are many books that were written on this specific subject. And wallahi, folks, the more you learn about balagha, the more enjoyable the Quran becomes. And if there's one thing, inshallah, I'd like you guys to leave here with tonight is I want to look into this field of Arabic eloquence. And there are some books that were written in the field. For example, Dalal al-Ijaz by al-Jurjani, Al-Kashaf by al-Zamakhshari. Despite al-Zamakhshari being a Mu'tazili author, he did serve the Quran by writing about the aspect of eloquence in the Quran. So something you have access to. By the way, like imagine someone said to you that if you climb Mount Everest, you can actually see a miracle. Yeah? I'm sure that some of us would start purchasing our tickets and heading over there, and maybe, it's going to be tough. I might die, but it's something that I could actually see for myself. That's amazing. By the way, learning balagha is a lot easier, something that you can find the sheikh, pick up the books, spend some time. It's going to take some time, but it's definitely worth it. So what happened to Ghifar? Ghifar, the tribe that were raiders, they're polytheists, they became monotheists. They were Bedouins, they became city dwellers. They were raiders, and now khalas, it's haram. We can't start killing people just because they're going to Hajj and start stealing their camels. They used to not observe the sacred months, now they are observing the sacred months, and they all converted to Islam. And their conversion as a whole caused the conversion of the tribe of Aslam. So Ghifar and Aslam were the first two tribes that converted to Islam. So think about this. Think about Abu Dhar. Abu Dhar is someone that's known to be, what's Abu Dhar's, what's his main quality? And I want to point at this guy, seems to be sleeping. Assalamu alaikum. You hear it? Poetry? No, something else. What? No. Abu Dhar, what's Abu Dhar famous for? Yeah, go ahead. Tadabbur? No. The main thing Abu Dhar is famous for is asceticism, his zuhd. He's someone that doesn't like the dunya. He's not involved in the dunya. And the dunya is something that pushed him away. In any case, with Islam, that's what he became. Before he was with a tribe of raiders. That's what he's famous for, from being from this tribe of raiders. Abu Dhar, when he was being beaten up by Quraysh for accepting Islam, for announcing Islam, Al-Abbas bin Abd al-Muttalib, the uncle of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he ran up to Quraysh while they were beating Al-Abbas, and he said, "You people, you know what's going to happen if we kill this man? Then our trade routes are going to be khalas, we're going to go to war with Ghifar. We don't want to go to war with Ghifar." Because Ghifar, they were something else. And then they all changed when they converted to Islam. What about the other tribes? Any guesses why? Because I mentioned two tribes that converted to Islam. What about the other tribes? The other tribes didn't convert to Islam yet. Any guesses why? The answer is in Sahih Bukhari, by the way. Very clear cut, subhanAllah. Any guesses? Why didn't they convert? Yeah, because you had two tribes converting early, but what about the other tribes? Tribes are converting are poor? Not bad. Not bad. Yep. Good answer. They had alliances with Quraysh. We have an answer by Amr bin Salam al-Jarmi saying the Arabs delayed their conversion to Islam till the conquest of Mecca. They used to say, leave him and his people Quraysh. If he overpowers them, then he is a true prophet. And back in the day, your tribe is everything. If your tribe accepts you, this is natural. If your tribe denounces you, if your tribe casts you away, you are nothing. Me today, like I know my sixth grandfather by name. That's it. I can't go farther back. Back then, knowing your lineage was everything, because if you're in the middle of the desert, you need to know as many fathers as you can, because if someone ambushes you, you better mention what your lineage is. That's your only chance of survival. You know, me and you, we meet up at the 12th grandfather, you know, something like that. Maybe that's going to keep you safe. So tribe was everything. And if you didn't have your tribe, you had no protection, which was the case, which was more or less the case with Rasulullah in his last years in Mecca. Barely any protection. They kept him alive, but that was it. And of course, they kept his people alive as well. Of course, now we're moving on to Al-Aws wal-Khazraj, the main two tribes, cousins, and their conversion to Islam and how they changed the Ummah and how they changed the history of the world. By the way, Aws and Khazraj, they fought each other for about 150 years. The story starts off with Malik bin Ajlan and the Khazraj, and they enter Yathrib. And at the time, the best of the lands were held by Jewish people. I'm not saying that the Jews were there first necessarily, but the Aws and Khazraj, they came to Yathrib or al-Medina al-Munawwara somewhat late in history. They came originally from Yemen. So what occurred was they were being oppressed by the Jews quite a bit. So Malik bin Ajlan went all the way to Isham, to the Levant, gathered an army and came back, and they started to go to war with the Jews until Malik bin Ajlan and the Khazraj had the upper hand. That was the first war. I'm just giving you guys a background of how crazy it was. How crazy the Aws and Khazraj and their battles were. Shortly after, you had the war of Sumayr. Sumayr was a man that was from the Aws. Malik bin Ajlan had a guest. Excuse me, by the way, with the names. You don't have to memorize the names, but just to give you an idea of the chaos. Malik bin Ajlan had a guest. And of course, the Arabs at the time, even today, but at the time, something else. If you have a guest, your guest is someone that you give more of a status to them than yourself. He had a guest that visited him, and that guest felt so happy to be around Malik bin Ajlan that he wanted to give Malik bin Ajlan an even greater status among his people. So his guest had a horse, and he said he gathered the people of Yathrib or the people of Medina, and he said, "Who is the greatest man in Yathrib? And whoever is the greatest man, I shall give my horse to." So they said to him, it's this person from the Aws. And he would debate him. And then they said, okay, Tayyib, it's this Jewish man. And he would debate him. He would never accept any name that was given as a candidate as the best person in Medina or Yathrib. However, when someone said Malik bin Ajlan, that's it. You're correct. Malik bin Ajlan, he gets my horse. And he made like this big fuss just in order to establish that Malik bin Ajlan is the best person in Medina. Imagine, just over who's the best person. That led to a war. A war that lasted for, if I recall correctly, 20 years over who's the best person. The war of Hatib is another crazy one. It also had to do with a guest and someone wanting to embarrass the guest of one of the Sadat, one of the heads of the Aws. So the story goes that a Khazraji called Yazid bin Fushum goes to a Jewish friend that he had, and he said, I want you to smack that guest do smack that guest and I'll give you my cloak. So what the Jewish man did is, he took the cloak immediately. In the khalas, the job is done. He took the cloak, he walked up to the man, and he gave him a swift smack. You can imagine where. And the man said, Ya Hatib. Hatib was the name of his host. Ya Hatib. I was embarrassed in front of the people. And Hatib came running into the marketplace after word has gotten to him with his sword in his hand. What happened? Who embarrassed you? This man embarrassed me. Kills the guy on the spot. Another war. You had 150 years of war between the Aus and the Khazraj. And the last one was the War of Bu'ath, which is, in my opinion, one of the craziest wars, which started off with the Khazraj, the head of the Khazraj, accusing the Jewish tribes of conspiring to go to battle with them. So the head of the Khazraj said, if you people, by the way, very important story, guys, because this has an effect on the seerah. This has an effect on the next 10 years of Islam. The head of the Khazraj says to the Jews, we know you're going to war against us. We know that you're conspiring against us. So the Jews denied it. So the head of the Khazraj said, prove it. Give us some hostages as a security, and we'll leave 40 young Jews in our homes. And from that, we're going to be reassured that you guys are not going to go to war with us. And the Jews, they said, okay. And they sent their children, 40 of their children, over to the houses of the Khazraj. When that happened, the head of the Khazraj said, okay guys, now we have 40 hostages. I'm going to put you in the nice houses. We're going to take over the homes of the Jews. Can you imagine that? And the Jews would not accept, they would not put their heads down, and they would not submit to the actions of those from the Khazraj that did this. So the Khazraj killed the children, with the exception of one of the heads of the Khazraj. Any guesses? Yeah, this is one of the more ironic twists in history. What? No, but strange guess, but anyone else? Huh? I think I heard you say something. Yeah, man. How do you know? You got the lecture notes. Okay, so Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul. Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, the head of the hypocrites of Medina, refused. And he was like, this is treachery. We have them as security, and now you're actually going to kill them to take their homes? So Abdullah bin Ubay refused. So a war erupted between the Aus and the Khazraj. And when the war ended, you had a lot of major deaths. So for example, Usayd bin Hudayr's father was killed. Some of the heads of the tribes. Abdullah bin Ubay, because he chose to not take part in this war, he had a special status among the Aus and the Khazraj, and he was chosen to become the king of Yathrib. He was chosen to become the head of Yathrib. Subhanallah. What happened next, guys? They had the civil wars. The Jewish tribes of Banu Qaynuqa', Banu Nadir, and Banu Qurayza were taking sides in these wars. Banu Nadir and Banu Qaynuqa', they allied with the Aus. And here is what caused the conversion of the Aus and the Khazraj. It's that the Jews would threaten the Khazraj specifically that there's a prophet that's going to come and we're going to avenge the death of our children. We're going to finally put you people in your place. And of course, this is something that we find in the Quran. The Quran testifies to this. Although before they used to pray for victory against those who disbelieved. And then when there came to them that which they recognized, they disbelieved in it. Meaning they disbelieved in Rasulullah ﷺ after they told the Khazraj that there's a prophet that's going to come. And by the way, this is something that is testified by second generation of Muslims, like Ata, Abu Ali, and Qatada. Now, these are some specific quotes that we have from Sirat ibn Hisham, authentic quotes. Salam ibn Salama said that a Jew said to the sons of Abd al-Ashhal, a prophet is coming from over there, and he points towards Mecca, towards Yemen. Asim bin Umar bin Qatada related that the Khazraj, when they met Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they realized that he was the prophet that the Jews were speaking about. And they said, this is the prophet that the Jews were threatening you with. Don't let them beat you to him. Let's accept him first before they accept him. Ajib. But you know what's interesting? Like, what even caused the Jews? How did the Jews know? How did the Jews know that a prophet was going to be sent? This is a common verse that's often used to argue for the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The mentioning of Kedar in the Bible, the mentioning of Salah, specific places. Kedar, by the way, they're the Arabs. And Salah, this seems to be referring to the mountain of Sal' in Medina. And that's why the Jews, wallahu a'lam, had this special place which they referred to as Sal', or which was known as Sal' right here. This is a mountain in the middle of Medina that the Jews actually buried their dead at. So this seems to be the reason why they believed in Medina as the location. What about the time? Because if you know a prophet's going to come, you should know the time and the place. So, wallahu a'lam, nothing that we can say for certain, but there is a prophecy in this apocryphal text called the Assumption of Moses that speaks of the advent of a messenger. As you can see at line 13, until his advent there shall be CCL time. CCL means 250. The word times, you'll find the term being used in the Old Testament. It's often referred to by scholars of the Old Testament as 7 years. Times refers to 7 years. So it's 250, which is CCL, and then times, so it's 1,750 years. From the time of Musa alayhi salam until the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. You do a little calculation, which is 40 years in which Musa alayhi salam was lost in the desert. You get 1790. Now, we can't be certain in regards to the death of Musa by year, but the commonly accepted year of Fir'aun or Ramses II is 1213 BC. If you add that to 1790, you come up with that specific time, 577 CE, Common Era, and Muhammad, peace be upon him, is alive at that time. He's there at that time. And that seems to be my best guess as to why the Jews believed this was the time in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, was to come. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari narrates the Prophet said, I saw myself immigrating from Mecca to a land in which there were date palm trees, and I thought it was Yamama or Hajar, but it was al-Medina Yathrib, which is interesting because like even Muhammad, peace be upon him, didn't know that he was going to be going to Medina. So what happened? The Aus and the Khazraj, they all convert to Islam. These two warring tribes that were at battle for 150 years, it's not a small time. They accept Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a prophet. And khalas, he announces peace between these two tribes. They're all good. Everything's fine. They make Muhammad, peace be upon him, their leader, naturally, because he's the prophet. And this led to the creation of the first Islamic nation. The Jewish tribes, unfortunately, rejected. They were not too happy with the prophet, peace be upon him, except being an Arab, not too fond of that, and two, that their enemies, the Khazraj, already sided with him and accepted him. However, of course, you have the conversion of some major Jewish scholars like Abdullah bin Salam and Mukhayriq. Abdullah bin Salam actually, when speaking about Muhammad, peace be upon him, he actually mentions Isaiah 42, which is this right here, or something quite close to it. You can find that in Kitab al-Isti'ab by Ibn Abd al-Barr, for those that are curious. So what about the hypocrites of Medina? The reason why they didn't convert to Islam? Who was it? Who was the head of the munafiqeen? Okay, not Abdullah bin Saba, yeah? So, yes, Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul refused to convert to Islam because he was supposed to be the king. And now Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the king, or he's the leader. And of course, that's something that hurt him because, hey, it was supposed to be his position. It was supposed to be his place. And then finally, guys, to me, the most interesting one is the conversion of the masses in Ghulibat al-Rum. And now, when we think about Ghulibat al-Rum, a verse that speaks about the Romans being defeated by the Persians, and then in a few years, the Romans will defeat the Persians, it doesn't seem like a big deal. One example I've heard was, hey, it's like Brazil and Germany. Germany beat Brazil 8-1, yeah? 7-1, mashallah. You guys know their dates, their scores. And then, by the way, like a year later, what happened? A year or two? Brazil won. Oh, subhanallah. La ya jama'ah, it's completely different. This is in the middle of a war in which the Romans, they're being obliterated. By the way, if you wanted to make a closer analogy, it would be Germany being 7-1, and the 90th minute, the prophecy is that the Brazilians are going to win. That would be a closer, that would be something, that would be a close comparison. You start a new game, the score is 0-0, ya habibi. You don't keep up with the previous score. Tayyib. What happened between the Romans and the Persians? What happened? In the year 610, Heraclius comes to power. Miskin Heraclius. In the year 611, the fall of Caesarea. In the year 613, the fall of Damascus. Heraclius attempts diplomacy. He sends letters to Khusro, the king of the Persians, begging him, Khalas ya habibi, stop taking over my land. We're good. We killed the traitor, we killed the previous emperor, now we're good, yeah? La. He keeps on, Khusro keeps on taking over land. The year 614, the fall of Jerusalem, Palestine, Jordan. The year 615, the fall of Egypt, Ethiopia, Alexandria, Libya. The Roman Empire is disappearing every year. You had famine, you had plague. Heraclius attempts to escape. Khalas, he gave up. He puts his gold onto the ship. He wants to leave his people because there's no way the Romans are going to defeat the Persians. Can you imagine this? The king, Khalas, he's leaving. He's going to go to Carthage in Tunisia. Khalas. Imagine this, yeah? Imagine the king of the Romans, he's going to flee. And then what happened was, subhanAllah, there was like a typhoon or something, and the ship sank. He was like, Khalas, kharbana, I'm just going to stay here. And the priests, they came, they said, Ya king, you can't leave your people. He was like, okay, fine, I'll stay. And then a year after, the fall of Carthage. So even if he went to Carthage, he wouldn't be safe. And by the way, at that time, Africa was super important. Africa, that's where all the wealth was. So being cut away from Africa, this destroyed the Romans. The next year, again, he attempts to have diplomacy with the Persians, failed again. And then, subhanAllah, 618. By the way, the Romans were not fighting one war. They were fighting two wars at the same time. So they're struggling to survive against the Persians, and now you got the barbarians, which are outnumbering the Romans as well. The Pannonian Avars, they're coming in from the west, and the Romans, they're coming in from the east. How are we going to survive? It got so bad that they took his, he had like a son out of wedlock. Heraclius had a son out of wedlock, and he gave him away. Take my son as security, that I'm not going to attack you. Yeah, to that extent. And then they had this, they had an attempt of diplomacy, and they had the chariot races. The Romans and the Avars, they had chariot races. The Avars, they tried to kill Heraclius during the chariot race. Yeah, and chaos, absolute chaos. And you know how he retaliated? He sent them more money. He sent them money. That's how he retaliated. He couldn't manage to fight the Avars, and now he's going up against the greatest army in the world, the Persians. Can you imagine that? And then, of course, you had the fall of Ankara in 1619. This is how it looked. In 9 years, this is how much territory was lost. Just let that sink in. Yani, if you look at the bottom image, yeah, okay, the Romans have a chunk of land in Europe, but now the Avars are taking over. And by the way, after this happened, غُلِبَتِ الرُّوم. It was in that situation that you have a prophecy. So it's not like, Habib, it's not like Brazil and Germany. It's not like Brazil and Germany. It was a time in which the Roman Empire was going to disappear in the year 621. And the year 626, you actually had the siege of Constantinople, when the Sassanids and Avars together, they're attacking Constantinople. Yeah. After all that, you have more pressure against the Romans. The prophecy is questioned. But now here's what's interesting. Tariq al-Tabari, through an authentic isnad to al-Hurmuzan, a fascinating story about how the tides turned and how the Romans, because we know the spoiler, we know the end, we know what happened in the end. We know the Romans, through history, were able to defeat the Persians, but how did it happen? So when this was going on and when Constantinople was being besieged, the siege took a long time. So Khusro sent letters to his general Shahrbaraz, his main general, that put more pressure, send in more troops, you have to end the Romans, but it wasn't working out and it was taking a long time. So what Khusro did is he sent a letter to one of Shahrbaraz's main commanders to kill Shahrbaraz. Khusro wanted to kill his main commander. The general under Shahrbaraz refused to do it. He refused to kill Shahrbaraz, who was the main commander of the Persians. So Khusro sent a letter to Shahrbaraz, you kill this general that you have under you. Because he wasn't following orders. He doesn't know what the orders are, of course. So when Shahrbaraz received the letter, okay, khalas. He calls in the general that he's going to have to kill the general. And he tells him, Khusro has ordered you to be killed. I'm sorry, Habibi, but this is the rule. This is what I'm instructed to do. What happened next was, the general said, he sent someone to have you kill me. He sent someone to me to have someone kill you. And then you had this conversation between them where the general brought in the letters and he showed Shahrbaraz the letters. This is my order. These are the orders to kill you. Now I'm supposed to be killed? So Shahrbaraz, from that, who was the most powerful Persian general, withdrew from the war, which gave Heraclius the ability to march with little resistance. Of course, by the way, Shahrbaraz lets Heraclius know of this. Imagine like the main Persian general tells the enemy, tells the commander of the Romans, do what you want, I'm not getting involved. And through that, Heraclius was able to storm the capital, and Khusro was killed by his own people. And at that year, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah is made, in which the Muslims and the polytheists from Quraysh have peace. And it's in that year, 7 years after the prophecy is made, that's when the war comes to an end, and that's when the Persians were defeated. What happened after the Persians were defeated? The Byzantines, of course, the Romans, they retrieved their land. The prophecy comes to pass. Niyar bin Mukram al-Aslami says, when that occurred, many people came to Islam. Because it was so unlikely. It was just unimaginable that the Persians would actually lose within a time limit, that you had the masses convert to Islam. Edward Gibbon, in the history of the decline and the fall of the Roman Empire, says, at the time when this prediction is said to have been delivered, no prophecy could be more distant from its accomplishment, since the first 12 years of Heraclius announced the approaching dissolution of the empire. Subhanallah. And that is when you had that boost in conversions to Islam. As Zuhri says, Zuhri, Muhammad bin Muslim bin Shihab, one of the major scholars from the Tabi'een, says, War is the only time people met. So when the truce occurred and war ceased and people felt safe among one another, they met and spoke and negotiated in speech and disputed one another. So anyone with a mind that it was spoken to about Islam entered it. And at that time, it was double the amount of conversions to Islam.